Here's the thing: a grandparent's relationship with their grandchildren is a privilege, it's not a right. Now, if you're a grandmother, I totally understand that you are not pleased with what I just said. I'm sure my mom would not be pleased either. Actually, my mother-in-law wouldn't be pleased. If you've been around here before, then you know about me and my mom probably couldn't care less. But hey, I'm talking to you, mom, who um, is in a bit of a bind. The bind might be that you are one of the many people that the Surgeon General wrote about in his report last year who are going through it with this parenting thing. You know, you just don't have enough hours in the day to work your job and do it to their satisfaction, to tend to your husband, to tend to your children the way you'd like, and all the activities that come with them, and keep the home, and all the other ands that might be uh, tacked onto you. There are just not enough hours. There never has been. But in a day and time where technology promised us that we would get our time back, it seems like now technology's eating up our time. And so you don't have the time you want to do this thing the way you'd like. And so, like many, you have turned to your parents to ask them to help y'all out and ease up childcare costs, and can they come by you after school, and can they stay with you a weekend here and there and give me and daddy a break, all the things. um, and you may have done that out of sheer necessity because the wallet required you to. But you're finding that a lot of the issues that you experienced with your parents while you were growing up, the things that you've had to have therapy for, or probably should have had therapy for, and have marked you and even mark the way that you approach parenting. And now that you're needing some help, um, managing all the things, and sort of getting ahead of things so that you can get back on top of parenting the way you like, you're asking for help, and you are noticing that the things that your parents are saying to your kids, or the things that they are choosing to do with your kids, even though you have expressly stated that you're going in a different direction and you don't want them to be exposed to this and that, you're just finding that you're being undermined. You're finding that you're even being disparaged. They're even speaking ill of you to your own children, and expressing their discontentment with you as a daughter, with the position you're in now, and whatever the things may be. And you're in a bind because you need their help. You hate that you need their help. And deep down, in spite of all that happened in your childhood, you are rooting for the fact that your parents could do it different with your kids than they did it with you. And you didn't want to rob your children of the experience of spending time with their grandparents, of learning from them and all the richness that they potentially have to offer. The opportunity the opportunity to have another set of people in your life who love you but don't have ultimate responsibility for raising you. And so it can be a little more fun, right? You want them to have that because maybe you had that with your grandparents, or if you didn't, you wish you did. And so it's sad. It sucks that here you are hoping for things to be different and legit needing their help, and that's not what they're giving you, because help is only help when the person is helping you move forward in a positive way. um, if that's not what's happening, it's harm. And if the help that your parents are offering you is really harming your relationship with your children, you have every right to establish boundaries, to put limits on, to restrict their access, their time, um, with your children. It's a privilege for them. It is not a right. There is no law that says that grandparents have to have time with grandchildren. There didn't need to be a law because it just would be the way of life that, if you come out of a good situation, you want your children to be exposed to those same people because they love you. And so, by extension, they would love your children. But not everybody has that dynamic. And part of your conscientious approach to parenting is assessing who are the people around your children who are doing well by your children. And to do well by your children is and I'm talking to you assuming that you are an intentional mom, you love your children, you have put thought into how you want to lead and direct them, how you want to love them, how you want to raise them. You have a vision for why you do what you do, and you're doing the best you can, and you're doing a good job. And you had hoped that you know your parents would come alongside and say, you know what, hey, we might not have done it the way we want to do it with you, or it may not have gone as smoothly as we would have liked, but we are here to support you in your endeavor to raise your children and to have a great relationship with them. It would be nice if it just flowed like that. And it would be nice if the, there was a healthy dynamic that allowed for that. But if there's not, you don't have to feel obligated to force an issue that is ultimately detrimental to your relationship with your child and to their outcome. You don't have to. Will your parents be displeased? Yes. Will they be disappointed? Will it be yet another thing that they talk about you for or disparage you for? Yeah. But if that's the relationship that you've had up until this point, then it's nothing new. It's not a new thing. Now, my situation is different because my mom wasn't like loving to be a mom. So being a grandmother is not her favorite thing in the world either. But for my grandfather, but for my father, it is. My father looked forward to having his grandchildren and great grandchildren around him. And part of what he laments, they're both now in their 80s, and part of what he laments is how infrequently he sees his grandchildren and great grandchildren. And I mean, there were four of us kids. One of my sisters passed away, but there were four of us. We all have children. And he very rarely sees any of our children. And we all have our own reasons for that. But I won't speak for them. I will just say that for me, um, my experience with them growing up and the way that they even have um, chosen the viewpoints they have chosen to have, even after we've all left home, um, the way they socialized, the way they live their lives now. Yeah, I don't just send my kids, plus we don't even live in the same state, but it's not going to be a thing where it wasn't a thing where my kids were sent over to their house for 2 weeks out of the summer and all those kinds of things. We don't have that kind of dynamic. If you have seen my other videos, you know about my relationship with my mom, which is, you know, minimal. It in its depth. We have a relationship, but it's not one that's deep. It's not one um that's close. It's not one where she has ever communicated with her words or with her time or with her presence that she enjoys me as a daughter and enjoys spending time with me, enjoyed raising me, uh, any of that. So that's my experience with her. And she's not much different. And so that colors then whether or not I would subject my children to the same. Um, and my siblings have their reasons why they don't. But if you ask my parents, especially my dad, he is, why don't I have my grandchildren around? Why aren't they around? Why don't I see them more? because there's a lack of connection between what and how he showed up as a parent with um, what he gets to enjoy now as a grandparent. Because here's the thing, I think, and a lot of this is the generation you're born in. My parents are in their 80s. They're in that generation where they think and believe wholeheartedly that there are just certain things that they are supposed to be able to have because that's just how it is. It doesn't matter uh, what relationship they had with their child, they're supposed to have access to their grandchildren. And that's just not the reality. The reality is that the more conscientious a person is in raising their children, the more thoughtful they are about reflecting on their experiences in their childhood, the more they have had conversation with their parents about what they want different as their children, or maybe as they are, young adults and out of the home, and can now go back and try to have those discussions. They're able to gauge, they're able to wet that finger and put it in the air and see how the wind is blowing and see if there's anything really different, if they're able to have an honest conversation with their parent, and their parent is able to own um, that I understand that the way I dealt with you hurt you, or you disagreed, or and work through and apologize where apologies are needed, or just come to the understanding to agree to disagree. But all of that said, none of that puts a grandparent in a position to demand that they have access to their grandchildren. And to you as the mom, um, I encourage you not to feel guilted into allowing that exposure. Now, the ideal, the ideal is that the situation be healthy and that grandchildren hang with their grandparents. Um, I didn't have a lot of time with my grandparents. Unfortunately, part of it is, being a first generation American and my grandparents living in a different in an island. Part of it is, you know, early deaths. Um, but my grandfather, my mom's father, I had a lot of time with him. I had my whole childhood with him. We did not live in the same state, but I had a relationship with my grandfather. So I know the joys of being able to have access to a grandparent. And, you know, I'm a believer. And the God I serve is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's a generational God. He flows through families generationally, and loves to do things in families generationally. And so, yeah, grandparents ideally should certainly, and I mean, and there are so many cultures where grandparents live in the home with the child and the grandchild. And so, ideally, yes, that is what we want, and that is what should be strived for. The conversations that need to be had to iron out any differences, difficulties, past issues, those you should try to have them. You should try to work those things out. But if you find that your parent is just unwilling to accept their part in how your relationship with them has gone off course, if they are unwilling to see themselves, um, to just see themselves and accept that they were not perfect, and accept that, they could have done things differently. And if, for heaven's sake, they have spent time with your children and you are hearing and seeing that they are casting you in a negative light towards your own children, you are well within your right to, at the very least, put restrictions around the time they get to spend, the access they get to have with their children, with your children, and if need be, to forbid interaction with your children. You have to give account for your children. They are yours to raise, and you want to raise them with the support of people who love you and who love them. That is the win. But when that's not possible, then it's also your responsibility to say, hey, this is not going to be healthy for them. It's not going to be healthy for my responsibility to raise them. Uh, Undermining that responsibility is not a help. But I tell you what I will do as a grandparent. I've already put thought into this. I'm My role will be to support my children. Listen to me. I know everybody says, and you've heard this, you probably say it, and no shade. It takes a village to raise a child. I've always been like, no, until I finally realized how I would reword it. And for me, my understanding, my experience is it takes a village to support a mother. I'm not even going to say parents because the reality is that the mother is the one with the majority of the responsibility in that family. She is juggling all the things, and then if when she has a job outside the home, God help her. But the major everybody's looking to her. Even the kids know you need something, ask your mama. So the reality is that the moms are the ones who are getting pulled on, and it's the moms who get discouraged when it looks like a child is going in a totally different direction than what they have sown their life into. It is the mom who needs encouragement when she has a newborn and has tried all the things and doesn't know what else to do. It's a mom that needs the encouragement. She's responsible for her children. Her and her husband are responsible for that child. God entrusted that child to them. What the village can do is support them in their efforts. So when you pop up and say, this is a situation and it's overwhelming to me, what are your thoughts, mom? Then that's when mom can give a suggestion. But it's not for your mom to overstep, overreach, uh, to tell you what to do with your child or to constantly give you her opinion about what you should do, especially not in front of your child. Um, those things are not okay. And if she's doing even worse, like I'm mentoring a young lady right now, and she is having an even worse experience where, her mother has had to have custody of her children for two of her children for reasons that are private. But instead of loving on those kids and taking care of them until such time as the lady I'm mentoring can reconnect, she's actually taking the opportunity to create as much distance and division between my mentee and her children as possible. It's completely destructive, um, but it's not surprising because of her behavior with my mentee when my mentee was growing up, the way she treated her, the way um, she neglected her. Uh, it's more of the same. But unfortunately, the lady I'm mentoring is not in a position where she can take her children back right now. And so she's having to suffer through this experience of a grandmother who is really undermining the opportunity that she has to actually use her position to secure a legacy of health in her family, to pivot from the kind of toxic behavior that she um, poured out uh, several years ago when her daughter was growing up, and to take this as like a do over in a way, because now she's actually responsible for these children right now. And she has an opportunity to not only love and care for them in the way that they need, and maybe that she didn't do for her own daughter, but then to also make it so that when the time comes and they can all be reunited, that it's a healthier transition. It's one where um, she's always spoken well of her daughter, and the children feel confident that they will not only have their mom, they'll have their grandmother as well. This situation is not that. This situation is where grandmother has pitted herself against the mother, and it, it's to no good end. There's no good that's ultimately going to come of it. These children are going to grow up resenting one or the other when none of that was necessary. And so, you may be in a position where you're stuck. You need the help, and you need to push through until you don't need the help, and then you can establish boundaries if your parents are more on the toxic side. But if you're not in that position, and maybe you just feel that you owe it to your parents for them to have as much access in whatever way that they want to, you feel guilty, you feel ashamed. um, I'm here to tell you that you don't need to. You are the one ultimately responsible for raising your children. And the influence that God has given you in their lives is something that you are supposed to honor and protect. And even if a blood relative, even if your mother has decided that it is her goal, for whatever reason, out of her own hurt that she has not acknowledged, that she wants to undermine and maybe do to you what, pay you back for whatever grief you've caused her. If any of that is her issue, that's not your issue. That's not your child's issue. And it's not for you to entertain that out of some sort of blind guilt. Um, yeah, you don't owe your parents that. Their experience of your children and their opportunity to pour into your child is a privilege as much as it would be anyone else's. And I encourage you to have the conversations that you need to have if it's important for you, for family unity and legacy, which I'm here for it. I'm a believer, and God is a God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You see that all the time in the Bible, and so God loves to work through family generations. He does. Um, that's the ideal. But this is also a broken world with broken family dynamics, and where people have refused to heal what's broken. You have to accept that they refuse, and honor it by you choosing health and wholeness for the part of your family that you're responsible for. You can't make people choose to be healthy and whole. That's something they have to want. And maybe when you set the boundaries, they'll reconsider and they say, okay, well, what do I need to do in order to spend time with them? What do you need to see? What? And then you can share that with them. And then if they make the decision that that's what they'll do because it's so important for them to be a part of your life, then great. It's a win. But you don't do yourself or your child a service by exposing them to toxicity that undermines who you're meant to be in their life. What you're doing is propagating a cycle. You're propagating a generational curse, a generational bondage, a generational cycle of dysfunction. And you don't have to do that. So, this is a tough one because, again, everybody could use a helping hand, especially in these days. And it would be great if it could be your mom. And if it can, God bless you. Enjoy it. But if it can't, it's okay. Grieve the loss of what could have been. Grieve what you may see your girlfriends are able to do with their moms, and how their moms are involved in their child's lives and give them breaks to be able to go and get a pedicure and a manicure. Grieve that. Grieve what you have to do instead. The arrangements you have to make. the friend that has to keep your kids, or the nanny that you have to get, or the babysitter that you have to get. Grieve that. It's a loss, and you should grieve it. And then give yourself grace to do the next best thing. It may not have been the thing you would have always wanted to do, but do the next best thing, and be content with that. I just encourage you. I know it's tough, and um, I've seen my other sister. I've seen her had to make the choice. She is a grandmother, and yet she knows what it is to keep distance between her children and our parents. She's had to make that choice. I've watched her make it. Um, she believed that was what was best, and I understood why she believed it. And so, you know, be encouraged. You never know; things may change, but if they don't, choose the next best thing. Do right by your kids. They're counting on you. They're counting on you because you're the one responsible for them. So until next time, please remember, when it comes to you being the mother of your children, you are the mother of your children, and you are the woman for the job. Don't delegate that to someone else. No matter how they might try to guilt you or twist your arm, you are the woman for the job. And keep it up. Take care.